Spring isn't the only time we feel the effects of seasonal allergies. We're on the precipice of some misery as summer turns to fall. Joining us with more on autumnal allergies is Dr. Lindsey Steadman, physician allergist at Charleston Allergy and Asthma. Good to have you.
Hi, thank you.
Okay, so yeah, it's obvious there's stuff in the air right now. I'm seeing a lot of birds and bees and all of that, but I'm also seeing a lot of the particulates collecting on my car again, on my front porch. So it's not my imagination.
No,
there's stuff going on here.
Yeah, welcome to fall allergy season. We're here.
Yeah.
We're here.
So what makes fall different from spring?
So fall is obviously this time of year.
Yeah.
So it kind of starts usually mid-August and it runs all the way through September, October, and even down here for us into November. We're seeing a lot of those what we consider fall pollens. So during the fall, we're having generally weed pollens. That's what you're seeing. That's what you're usually exhibiting symptoms from.
Okay.
Whereas compared to during springtime, those are usually the tree pollens. And so down here for spring, we start seeing tree pollens around mid-February, and they can last well into, even early midsummer, just because of the way our climate is. Summer allergies are typically grass pollens. And again, we have a very long pollen season. So if you have, for instance, a couple of trees, a couple of grasses, and a couple of weeds that you're allergic to, you can have symptoms almost all year.
All year long. What about just the effects of being in a new climate, let's say? So myself, I'm a transplant.
Right.
And then I noticed after being here a couple of years, I was certainly allergic to pollen, but then I was noticing other effects. Other things were happening to me when I would eat certain foods that I never considered or really had ever been tested for having an allergy to. So how do you explain that?
Sure, yeah. So what you're probably describing is something called oral allergy syndrome, also known as pollen food syndrome. And so what happens to those patients is you're actually allergic to the pollen, and that's what gives you those stuffy nose, sneezing, itchy eyes, the itchy ears, postnasal drainage, those types of symptoms. And you're right, it can take up to usually 2 or even 3 years after moving from a completely different region to here before you start noticing those symptoms. It can take some time to develop those allergic responses to the local pollens here that you hadn't been exposed to previously.
That's so bizarre because I never really had environmental allergies, and then until I moved here and I started really breathing in the pollen, I would just notice that I was getting weird reactions to other things. So why does that happen to our bodies?
So yeah, when you moved here, you were being exposed sort of continuously after a few seasons, then all of a sudden your body decided it was gonna not like those things, and that's when it started responding that way. Now to the foods, for instance, that oral allergy syndrome I had mentioned, that usually gives patients sort of an itchy mouth, an itchy throat, sometimes almost a tingle. It's more of a discomfort, and usually it's to things like fresh fruits and vegetables.
Okay.
And that's very different than a true food allergy, where you would hear about things like peanut, egg, dairy, and generally in younger kids most of the time. And those are life-threatening allergic responses. But what you're experiencing and lots of other patients who we take care of, that oral allergy syndrome, it's because you're allergic to the pollens that are pollinating at the time. A lot of trees and a lot of weeds will do that to people. And what happens is you're allergic to the pollen, and that chemical structure of the pollen itself looks very, very similar to certain fresh fruits and vegetables. So we call that a cross-reactivity. And so that cross-reactivity is what's making you feel like when you take a bite, for instance, of an apple, it'll give you that kind of itchy mouth, itchy throat. It usually goes away on its own by about 30 minutes later, and you don't progress to any more of those life-threatening symptoms.
Does it ever manifest itself on your skin?
Generally, it's primarily oral and throat,
okay.
but there are some people who, if they're handling those fruits and vegetables, sometimes can feel a little bit of itchiness.
Fascinating. But you're not really technically allergic to that food.
Exactly.
But then once you've acclimated to the climate, does it eventually go away?
Sometimes not. A lot of patients, if you're still having those, for instance, the nasal allergy, eye allergy symptoms during that season, then the oral allergy syndrome can kind of stick around too. But that's why we try to focus on good control of those nasal allergy symptoms, and we can do things like medications or allergy shots, and then that will at times help also with the oral allergy.
I'm glad you mentioned that. So real quick, just so our audience knows, so fall allergies come, medication typically the best way to handle the shots?
So it kind of depends. Everybody's a little different. We do recommend you at least start by getting evaluated by a board certified allergist, and then that way we can sort of hone in on exactly what is causing your allergic symptoms.
Okay.
So if it's fall season, we can pretty much guarantee there's some weed involvement there. But fall also, we have a lot of outdoor molds that will cause some symptoms for people.
Moisture in the air is constant too.
Exactly.
So,
and like I said, you can have other seasons. You can have those perennial or indoor allergens that are year round. So the first step is finding out what you're allergic to so that we can help teach you how to reduce your exposure to those allergens.
First step is to call the doctor. Talk to the doctor first. All right. I want to thank you so much for joining us. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Stay healthy, everyone. We're back after this.